Hey, Corey, how's it going?
Doing good, Josh. How are you?
Excellent. I'm doing great, thank you.
Hello to everyone else out there.
Good afternoon. Well, we can go ahead and get started. We've got a lot of great stuff to talk about today. We are Two Enrollment Guys talking about research this afternoon. I'm Josh Bistramowitz. I have been in higher education for oh gosh, about 15 years, both at a medium-sized public institution, followed by a private small institution, and recently joined Media Cross. So super excited to have you all today.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. And my name's Corey Baker. Thanks for those who've returned for this webinar and everyone new that's come in. I've been in higher ed now. How is it that we always forget? Around 13 years. I have been both on the higher ed side, freshman transfer, adult, CRM, visit day, a little bit of everything within higher ed, and then went to the higher ed marketing. But I've also done some work in CRM, also CRM implementation for higher ed as well before coming over to Media Cross as well. And like Josh said, we're your Two Enrollment Guys, but this webinar, we are really excited that we actually have a third person with us. So I am very excited to introduce our really good friend, Dr. James Vineburgh. He is Media Cross's research partner. That he's kind of our partner in crime in general. We've worked together on a couple different projects. He will be coming in from that research side. So Josh and I, and he does have the higher ed background as well. But Josh and I will talk a lot about those the higher ed instances and things that are very practical or things that we did that really helped. And Dr. Vineburgh is really going to drive home really from that research side. So James, I'm glad that you're on.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, as the good folks and my partners at Media Cross indicated, I've also been in higher education for over a decade now. The picture that you're seeing of me was taken earlier in my career. I'm a lot more gray than that now. And I just want to warn you that if you hear scratching in the background, that's a very needy cat.
We are all a pet friendly. I've got two puppers that are running around as well too. So the joys of social distancing, right? Well, we just kind of want to welcome you today. Like I said, we're super excited to jump in and get started. Just a couple quick notes is that you are automatically muted and we cannot see you. So don't feel like you have to keep whispering to your colleagues or anything else of that nature. We cannot hear you whatsoever. And then we do have a chat function that's going to be to your right. Feel free if you have any questions or if there's anything that you need, feel free to use that. You can also chat with each other. And then at the bottom, there's actually an open questions. So we're going to address questions at the very end, but at any point, feel free to ask any questions that you may have top of mind. If it is absolutely necessary we answer at that time, we will, but we will try to hold off until the very end to gather all the questions and get started. So
we don't see you, we don't hear you. So if you need to take your jacket off because you're sitting at home, Josh is going to keep his on, but I would put money on he's probably wearing shorts with his jacket right now. Am I correct?
That would be correct. All right, folks. Well, let's go ahead and jump right in. Sometimes we always think that, research and data collection isn't always the sexiest. But when it comes in terms of actually moving on that research, it is actually quite sexy. And it's something that the three of us definitely geek out at because it really does support the decisions that you're making. I never like to say that research should dictate the decisions, but your decisions definitely should be research informed.
About ways that research has typically been done, both in higher education and in, frankly, most other industries, and ways that we can do it a little bit differently. And those different ways can really be infused in other types of marketing initiatives, for example, enrollment management, alumni relations. And so the things that we're going to show you today, some of which will be a little bit more in the tried and true category, but most of it is going to be looking at sort of more modern techniques on collecting data and not only using that research data to inform overarching marketing strategy, but how to actually execute that marketing strategy at the exact same time as you're collecting the data. And so, is it time for me to share my screen?
Not quite yet.
It's definitely something that hopefully this statement here, that's the way we've always done it, is something that hopefully your reaction is going to be very similar. It's an eye roll. It is, that is one statement that always used to drive me bonkers, is just always moving forward as if things have not changed, when really everything has changed.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've met a couple times to discuss this webinar and our thoughts, and just to chat about higher ed and talk shop. And the one thing that Dr. Vineburgh really brought up that hit true and makes sense is that ultimately now our data has changed. Our data is no good anymore. Perceptions that students may have had 8-9 months ago, heck, even 6 months ago now, have been changed by COVID, by the way education's being, like what this fall is going to look like, and how hybrid models are becoming more popular, and what they're thinking they're going to do has changed. So not that overall data of understanding potentially like who's a good fit for the university as a whole, some of that data is still good, but when you're talking about perceptions and what they think they're doing, that's changing constantly. And really that's how it's always been done. We get research a long time ago and we just keep with that model. It's really not going to be the same thing that we're going to keep doing this year for sure, and probably moving forward. We're going to recommend that you're not just taking a once every 3-year approach. You are looking at your model. You're not doing just what you've always done. So I know James is going to talk a little bit, the type of research out there that can really help you with this.
Absolutely. And I think that that's important too, is that, we traditionally thought of research is kind of that strategic high level, right? That you need to collect all your research. It took forever and a day we're talking 6-8 months to gather good research. Then you compile all that research. There's a lot of data that goes into it. You usually are paying a lot of money for somebody to collecting a lot of this information, and then you're going to act upon it. Like Corey said, in the days of now, you've got COVID, which shifted everything literally over the course of a couple of weeks, and how all that historical data is now just gone. Everything has changed in terms of it. And so thinking it as a strategic approach that you gather and then act, those days are gone. Yeah, so when thinking of research, if all you need is love, but no, you really need the research. And that's something that's super important. Again, it's going back to the fact that this is constant. This is not something that you do it once and you move forward. So really, when we talk about research, this is something, where to start. And, when we're talking about research being a continuous platform, and something that you should be doing continuously, a lot of us get inundated and say, oh my gosh, well, that's just yet another thing that you're adding to my plate, right? I'm already so busy. I'm already doing 1,000,001 things. Now you're telling me that this is not a process that we do once a year, twice, or even once every 2 or 3 years. Now you're saying we should be doing this continuously. One area that you really can look into is those that have a CRM. This might be one of the best ways that you can utilize that CRM to begin to be able to collect some of that data. And when you're considering collecting data, you always want to consider the format as well too. What's the right delivery? Is it your traditional email? Is it going to be text messaging? You can either gather some data from print, but really deciding, what is the data that you're looking to collect, and what is that best platform, and then also delivery.
Yeah, and I think to kind of piggyback off that, Josh, when we talk about it, the next section on this slide talks about surveys, but Josh and I both have quite a bit of experience running CRMs for our institution. And I always thought about, do we need another tool, or does what we have in the CRM work? Now, we realize there's always workarounds, and it's not always the easiest, but sometimes doing a little extra work where it's not going to cost the institution the budget that you don't have to get another tool is really going to benefit you and the institution, show your value and what you can bring to the team. So I know in my particular case, we had a form tool that allowed us to take forms that either load it right into the CRM or just load it into the form tool. So we were able to actually use that surveys for even internal surveys of current students. We didn't really need to collect the data into the CRM and not necessarily needed data in the SIS. We just needed the data to inform decisions, not this, what would you say, Josh? Not make the decision, but help inform what you're going to decide to do. And so when I think about some of the opportunities within, email and using surveys, these student surveys per the funnel stage. So looking at your historical funnel, and where were you losing a majority of your students? Many of us already probably on the higher ed side have like, oh, I'm withdrawing. This is why I withdrew. But what about that? They didn't necessarily withdraw. They just kind of went stagnant. They didn't move to that next call to action. They didn't move that next stage of the funnel. So what are you able to communicate with those students via kind of like a BuzzFeed style survey, something more fun and energetic? You're not going to do a 4-page, 5-question each page. They're not going to answer it. But what can you do that's a one question, like, I didn't, like, the angry cat saying, like, I'm not even interested, leave me alone. Or, somebody's like, I thought my application was already submitted, let me go do that. And like really have a little more fun. Now, you need to take into account your branding, your messaging, and your tone. But really, these are the type of things that our students that we're recruiting these days, they're constantly inundated with these fun, more BuzzFeed style things, quick information, TikTok videos, all the things that are coming through. So where can you connect with them when they're withdrawing or when they're getting hung up in the funnel, just through quick surveys that you ask them a quick question? Those are things that you don't need necessarily to partner with a big partnering to do research. Those are things you can do internally and that you can turn on and off and react to what students are saying right when they send it. And then right alongside that, there's the opportunity to talk to the parents. Where do the parents rank you as a school? You can ask a few more questions of parents than you would of a student. And if they're really interested, you're going to get some feedback on that as well. And then one of the things we've done historically, using surveys or a survey tool or data collection tool. I don't even want to keep just saying survey. Collecting data in search. So, you pay a lot of money. Some schools will pay a lot of money for a third-party vendor to send emails on your behalf and usually send kind of a form. And then they give you the results at best, maybe some insight into how the emails performed. Those are things with just a little bit of setup and work you're able to bring internally and have somebody partner with you maybe to write the emails or develop the search brand. But I've seen schools go as far as more like a scholarship calculator that is tied to their search so that you can actually see if you have a decent scholarship package, if you're able to put your ACT or SAT, if it's required or not, and your GPA in as a self-reported and see what potentially scholarship you can get. Not only are you doing that, you're also getting data points along the way that you then can use later on in the recruitment stage saying, okay, the student said they had a X ACT, we really want to go after that student. Or, the students that are this level and below, we're still going to communicate generally with them, but we're not going to do that extra call. Or we know that they may not have a good chance of getting in, or they might be great for a program over the summer that would help them get in. You now know that information to go through and really have that conversation with those students along the way.
Absolutely. I think it's a good point too, we think of collecting data in terms of always SAT, ACT, and, financial and so forth, but think of it as a great opportunity to talk about fit. I mean, if it's a short BuzzFeed style kind of questionnaire, what's information that you can ask that you can later use to customize that process for the student? Students put all their information out there on Instagram and TikTok, and they expect you to know them. And so this is one way that you can gather that information and gather that data and that research to be able then to almost, sounds bad to use it against them, right? That you know them and that you can show that you know them because of information and points of research that you've collected on them.
Yeah, my previous institution actually looked at learning styles and students' different learning styles and took a quiz to learn learning styles. And then learning styles or, what is unique to your school that they can fall into buckets where you can build communication plans that are then personalized based on that unique quality at your school that allows them to feel more connected because you got one piece of information during a search, survey or search, reach out, or, using that search. And I know James is going to talk about it a little bit in the widget conversation about how you can learn and collect data later. And that's something I firmly believe in. What's the minimum amount you can get on a student to get them into CRM, and then continue to ask little chunks of information to personalize throughout the funnel?
100%. So James, why don't we get into the meat and the potatoes? They're really kind of the exciting part of it, and show us kind of some of the tools that you've created to kind of help us gain that information, that research from these students.
Screen here. And hopefully you can see a website for an institution. Are you seeing that?
Not yet. You try one more time, James.
Okay, let me try it one more time here. Is that working now?
Let me double check.
It says that it's sharing. I'll try again.
Always.
Here we go, James. We got you.
Okay, great. So talking about ways in which we can infuse research into other types of marketing initiatives, as well as collect data, frankly, in real time. One of the problems that we talked about with some of the traditional historical ways that research is often done is that very often research is at the front end of a project. It can take, up to a couple months, be very expensive, and then it almost seems like a lot of other initiatives are on hold until that research is done. So let's look at a way we can get around that, at least in certain ways. What you're seeing with this little widget that just popped up on this website, it looks and feels like a live chat solution. In fact, it is not. It is nothing more than a survey that is also serving in a lead generation capacity at the same time. So what's happening is that prospective students are being asked, what degree levels they're interested in, what best next steps are, and then, also collecting contact information. So what's really nice about this, and are you now seeing kind of some bar charts?
Yep.
Great. So what this means now is that not only are you collecting information that helps enrollment management initiatives, but you're gaining an understanding as to what are people looking for. For example, what degree levels are most sought after? When prospective students engage with you, are they most interested in applying next, learning more, seeing a virtual tour, scheduling visits? And then, how do they prefer to be communicated with? Are they willing to receive text messages, for example? And then what's on their minds? What kind of questions do they have? If you see this word cloud in the lower right of the screen, the larger the font size, the more frequency with which that term was mentioned. So we can see online degrees right here. Clearly, given our current environment, we know that a lot of students and prospective students are asking about online or hybrid options. So what happens here is, we are collecting leads that flow right into this institution's CRM, and therefore the admissions team can follow up, immediately and help these prospective students move through the funnel. But at the same time, we're also gaining an understanding as to what is important to these prospects as they're in the consideration process, and what are they looking for, and what do they want to do. Next, we talk about student search. And again, historically, very oftentimes, market research might be done at the onset of a student search campaign, And then it's almost like all the communications wait until that research is done. So before email communications, before postal mail communications are sent out, we want to gain a really thorough understanding of our prospective students. In this case, what we're doing at MediaCross is we're infusing the surveys into the email communication flow. So for example, if we're thinking about an email flow that ultimately might be 15 to 20 emails, let's say, we add surveys into the mix for both the students who are on the list as well as their parents. So this way we can gain an understanding as to what's most important to these students and parents, so that the data, for example, if we know that academic quality is far and away the number one attribute that students and parents are concerned with, followed by cost to attend or outcomes, we can actually alter our email and postal mail communication flow and or segment the students by having an understanding as to what's important to them. So again, we can in real time infuse research into the process and act upon that data immediately, so that we don't have this kind of, scenario where we just do a ton of front end research and then it's almost like everything's on hold. So basically we get rolling, we collect data, and in real time we modify our strategy based upon the data that we're collecting. So again, what you're seeing here is an example of a survey that would be sent out to parents in an email communication, which again, we can kind of track who's opened and responded. And if you're familiar with a lot of the survey tools, you want to understand who's opened and responded to your communication so that you can send reminders and things like that. And so we have the ability to do that.
Yeah, and James, if I can jump in real quick. Can you go back to the MVSU, kind of the widget that's on like the home screen of the website?
Absolutely.
One of the things I talk about this and wanted to bring it up. If you'll notice, it looks similar to kind of that the AI, like an open source, open-ended chatbot that you can ask anything to, but it's not. It is much more targeted of what they're asking and where they get as they go through it. So at some cases, they type in, when it's like an open-ended question, that's when, like, what's your first name? You can type in Corey and then hit enter. But when you're really getting down to what you were asking them, it gives them the choices that they can select one or multiple from. And there's some pitfalls of open-ended chatbots. Obviously, there's some very big benefits to having a chatbot that the students can just go and ask anything and it starts sourcing your web. But as those who probably have implemented them or have continued to try to stay up and maintain them, it can be tough. It's a big project. It could be a full-time job to do that, especially when you're updating your website constantly. And where's that information hosted? Where is it coming from? Who's updating it? I actually was on a website for some school about a month ago, and I went in and typed in, it was on the homepage. So I said, what athletics do you have? Said, sorry, we don't understand. I'm like, okay, I'll simplify it. Athletics. Said, sorry, we don't understand. And that's a big, for some student, that's a big reason they go to college. So the fact that if I could put athletics in and it's not going to get me to that, I was actually kind of just annoyed. I'm like, you know what, this is even good. Where you can kind of drive the conversation with a closed-ended. Now, are there limitations? Certainly, you're not having them ask some of those other questions. But one thing with these, both the widget and the survey feature that James just showed, is at the end, it can actually push based on your results, like how would you like to be communicated, give you information, or what would you like to do next, apply, visit, whatever. It will redirect you to the appropriate spot to apply, to visit, and or give auto email communication to counselors or to the admissions office to follow up appropriately if the question isn't fully being answered. So it's a little bit more manageable, especially if you have a small staff and you don't have the ability to do that full open-ended, fill out any and every question that you think they may ever ask. It adds some nice direct communication to a student that usually ends up, it's pretty short in the answer, ends up with some great results.
Absolutely. And I just want to point out that this widget that you're seeing here is the exact same technology as the trackable survey. It's just a different shape, a different form. Obviously, in this case, it's going on the website to help generate enrollment activity, whereas in this scenario, it's more of something that's being sent to individuals, like a traditional online survey. Moving on, in addition to really providing different types of research value in that we are plugging in real time in enrollment management initiatives as well as student search campaigns, we're also providing value across departments that are oftentimes, frankly, quite siloed. So here's an example of a survey that we did for an advancement team at an institution where we surveyed all alumni. And I'm going to show you why there's value here for both enrollment management as well as alumni relations. So we collected all kinds of data about perceptions of attributes that we know tend to drive the enrollment decision process for prospective students. So things like perceived quality of academics, advising, preparation for employment, internship experiences, etc. And we also collected information about, how the alumni would prefer to stay engaged with the institution. And so we see, for example, 43 alums wanted to discuss current or planned giving. 134 wanted to discuss how they could continue their educations, and those folks were immediately forwarded to admissions. Now, so we can see here how a question like this has obvious value to an advancement department. And, we also asked about satisfaction with things like alumni communications and alumni magazines and things like that. But what we also did was we asked the alums for testimonials, which we then embedded using another technology that we have. We embedded the star ratings and alumni testimonials on different academic program pages throughout the institution. This has the effect of really driving search engine optimization. So the page ranks go through the roof when Google recognizes that there's third-party, credibility being established, and it's not just an organization kind of promoting itself. So what happened here is this institution saw nearly double the website traffic year over year once they embedded these ratings and reviews on their academic program pages. And this, of course, drove additional enrollment activity. And so it also provides differentiated marketing language, which I think a lot of schools frankly struggle with on their websites. And a lot of prospective students often feel like they don't necessarily see the outcomes that they really need to understand before they make an investment. So a solution like this really, don't like this expression, but it kills many birds with one stone. These are examples of ways that research data can not only be informative in and of themselves, but can immediately impact different marketing initiatives, whether that's enrollment management, advancement. So again, what we're really trying to do at MediaCross, even though we oftentimes will, engage in those big, brand studies and things like that do take time and kind of tee up next steps, we're always looking for ways to kind of collect pertinent data and immediately kind of put it into a feedback loop so that it is engaged within other types of marketing engagements that are happening. Again, these are just some sort of newer ways where you can conduct research and, do other types of campaigns and initiatives at the same time. One last thing that we want to show you too is a new type of tool. And Josh and Corey were talking about ways of really not bogging people down with huge requests of their time. Oftentimes when you think about traditional market research, you get a survey where it's like 60, 70 questions. It takes 15 to 20 minutes. People's eyes glaze over. And quite honestly, you end up with not always the best data quality. And at the end of the day, quite honestly, the real important data sometimes boil down to maybe 5 or 10 of those questions. And so, there's a big difference between collecting interesting information and useful information. So here's an example of a new technology that we also just released that kind of blends focus group and survey functionality. So what we're doing is we send literally a 1-question open-ended survey. And in this case, it says, please describe the challenges facing your institution in the face of the pandemic. Then what happens is, after somebody provides that open-ended response, they're asked to rate on a 5-point scale of agreement a certain number of prior survey takers' responses. So what we end up with is something that kind of blends the benefits of a survey and a focus group, in that we can collect rich, qualitative, open-ended data, but also easily quantify it in an efficient way. So what you're seeing here as an example is, the statement in the column to the left, and then the average score in the rating column on the 5-point scale, in addition to how many times that person's response was rated. So again, this takes about 1 minute per respondent, but over time, it aggregates all kinds of really interesting bits of feedback, and then provides a really simple way for the end user or client to understand which ideas have the most traction, where are there commonalities and what people are feeling. So, when you think about obviously the costs and time involved in conducting a traditional quantitative survey, in addition to focus groups that might be more or less focused on the same focal areas of inquiry, this is a much faster and cost-effective way to kind of gather qualitative data with a quantitative overlaid understanding. So in a nutshell, what I really want to get back to, and one of the reasons why I love and have a very deep partnership with MediaCross, is because we're really always looking for ways to combine what used to be thought of as very discrete projects or kind of granular efforts. We're always looking for ways to kind of put them together, to not lose time, to create solutions that are efficient and frankly more affordable than when oftentimes you get these very kind of chunky deliverables that are kind of one at a time. So we've had a lot of great results. We have a lot of ongoing projects that we're really excited about, and that's pretty much what I have for you. But again, just want to really emphasize that the data that were collected pre-COVID, and I know that we've already talked about this and nobody wants to hear more bad news, but the environment is so different now, and there are little wins that can be had. For example, for any of you out there who haven't sent just a really quick survey to the students who should be coming back for year 2 to find out, are they, and if not, why, or are they unsure? There are all kinds of little things that frankly institutions should probably be doing right now from a research perspective that are quick and affordable, that can really help you understand what's coming, to the extent we can control what's coming over the next couple months. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the good folks at MediaCross.
Thanks, James. I'm just blown away about the amount of abilities that we have to easily collect data, then also not to hog the data, right? I think that there was so much good data that you collected and that you showed, but how many missing opportunities if, for instance, like you mentioned, gathering that information on the alumni survey. But then if you miss that simple, very critical piece of sharing it with the admissions office, you're missing out. I think it was 140 alumni that are interested in potentially coming back and getting their degree. My gosh, at any institution I've ever been at, 140, even half of that changes your enrollment game, right? For the year. If you get half, that's 70 students in addition in your pipeline that you probably didn't even know about. And so just the amount of data and the ability to share that across divisions is just such a critical place that the only extra step it takes is actually handing it over.
Yeah, and I think what I like, especially on alumni, as an alum, is like the reach out wasn't solely, do you want to come back to school? It was, hey, we want to know about your feelings, and then it happened to be fed in there. And it's, yes, we're businesses, we're needing to make numbers, and we want to, but we always do that with the student's best interest. And if they're alumni and they had a good experience and they're wanting to try again or get an advanced degree or retool for a new career path, knowing that information without just straight up without knowing and just going to every alumni, like, do you want to go back to school? Here's your opportunity. You really find out that easily and quickly so you can target a specific audience.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I think that even the open-ended responses where they're telling you about their experiences and then being able to publish those, like you mentioned, it doubled the traffic, but then also those stories should immediately be given to the admissions counselors to add to their arsenal to be able to tell that story. When they're going out on the road, when we're able to go back out on the road, they're able to really kind of beef up that, here is a XYZ major, and this is what they're doing right now, and this is the experience that they had. It just, again, it reiterates and reinforces that storytelling and the return on investment that you're getting for your education.
Definitely.
Time is of the essence right now, right? Let's be honest. A lot of institutions were, struggling a bit before COVID-19, and the pandemic is not helping. And the ability to act quickly as the environment changes rapidly, and none of us have time to wait. And so, that's one of the things that is historically a pitfall of traditional ways of conducting research, is that it's almost like, hey, we're doing all this research and we have to kind of put everything else on hold until we have a clear understanding of the data. And right now, we need to be in lockstep. We need to be collecting data and immediately putting it into action with whatever initiatives we're engaged in to help us, frankly, stay afloat to the extent we can.
Absolutely, 100%. All right, well, woohoo, you all made it through research. Hopefully you're able to geek out as much as we are about this. This is definitely, I think any of us, the three of us especially, have just been really super excited to be able to provide this information to you, because we can talk about this every day, all day, get into the weeds of it, and just continually to better our processes because of it. But what are some of the important takeaways? We've kind of mentioned a couple already, but kind of going back to that, research is not just that high level, you do it for 8-9 months before a project starts and then you initiate it. It's really truly just a continual phase of gathering tidbits here, a little bit here, and then acting on that immediately. Those that do are the ones that are going to be successful, especially given the current situation. Also, something I think we didn't hit too heavy on this go round, but a lot of partners are going to talk about, well, we need your historical data, and we're going to put that into a model, and then we're going to push it out. The historical data is important and it's critical, but history only provides you the back shot. It doesn't give you any information in terms of what the current market looks like. If you have historical data prior to COVID, my gosh, how much does that change the game in terms of your historical data? Again, it's important that you can't completely wipe that out, because you have students that are successful and that you can utilize kind of the way that those students look like. But you can also add in additional things that are going to help you be more successful. Only using historical data is only setting you up not to hit goal. And then at the end of the day, it's going back to using that multi-research. It's gathering the information and then providing it to the appropriate folks, so that way they can personalize the process more so. Getting those stories to your admissions counselors that they can then push out, getting the information to alumni relations, getting the information to whoever needs it, and acting again immediately upon it to enable to get kind of where you're going.
Yeah, and one of the things that I valued along the ways is a school I worked at did geodemography. They were using that to understand what new markets to potentially go into, and of the current markets, and this is a little more of the historical data part that does tell you some things, and there is going to be your bread and butters, but they did not keep that at the VP and president cabinet or level. They actually brought that down to the admission counselors, the people who were doing it, the true assistant directors, if you will. And we were able to use that, especially those with larger territories, to prioritize phone calls, knowing those who are likely to enroll, regardless if that's historical data or new data. If people are responding to surveys, they're still interested. They're giving you information. If your counselors don't know that, you're letting them shoot themselves in the foot. Let them have the hot leads when they're hot. Let sure that they're getting emailed when they can. Give them the tools that they need. If you already, especially, I say tools, give them the data and tools that you already have that they can use and allow them to use it. Teach them how to do it. Not only are they going to make them better for recruiting your class, it's going to make them better professionals moving forward, that they understand why decisions are made, how to make decisions, and how to prioritize based on data points and research.
Preach, Corey. Oh, that's 100%.
Yeah, and blend deliverables. We talked about a lot of different things. We're talking about surveys, we're talking about chatbots and widgets and sentiment surveys and all these areas and BuzzFeed styles. Not everybody's going to respond to the same thing. So if you're blending surveys, some by text, like Josh said, text, email, there are ways to take general, just state of the nation surveys of your crew via social media as well. There's times to have fun and just do yes, no questions, see where they're at, and get that feeling of the type of students that involved and what they're doing. And really, at the end of the day, you're going to have to be flexible. This is more important now than it has probably been ever. Be ready to change. Be ready to think about what's coming in, what's happening in the world, and really think about not only what's happening for you, but every state's a little bit different right now. And how the students are moving forward is very different. I know where I'm at and Josh is at, very different right now. And so whenever we're talking about that and going through that, it's really important to think about okay, stuff is changing in the nation. We're getting new data. Where can we, tweak our communication? Instead of being reactive, think about already pre-existing all your communication. Make sure you know it inside and out. And where would you need to change that you're not just sending reactive emails all the time? You're being as proactive to data that you can.
Absolutely. And to remember, we're here to help, right? And it's super important that we know that we're throwing a lot of information. Hopefully we're doing it in a fun and approachable manner, but we know that this is a lot. Both Corey and I have been in your shoes. We know how much is already currently on your plate. And to be able to do this and do this well sometimes takes manpower that you may or may not have. It takes budget that you may or may not have. But we really, truly are here to help. Regardless of the project, regardless of the size or scope or budget, we truly are here to support you in your efforts. When you're successful, we're successful. And so we really want to make sure that we're very clear in that we really truly want to support you in whatever facet that means.
Yeah, and one of the things I've been most excited about since coming to Media Cross, specifically I feel generally, we're going to do what a client wants, but in the many cases possible, we're wanting to make sure not only are we tracking what's happening, but you as a client have insights into conversions via digital marketing, be survey tools. You have the ability to make new surveys or use the tool or come up with ideas that you're getting the results and you'll be able to act right away. It's not that you're getting that at the end of a campaign and then you see how it reacts. We want to react with you. We are a partner of yours. And I joked about earlier about many of you might pay a little bit too much for search right now. Are there abilities to take aspects of search internally and partner with someone out there, preferably Media Cross, but partner with somebody out there that can help writing the emails for you. Maybe just develop the email template design, but you're writing the emails and you'll send them on your own behalf, but you just need a little help with the design work. Or do you need help with the landing page? Think about where can you take that big budget and piece some of it internally and piece some of it externally so that you're saving money, you're having better and more insight into your data and be able to make those decisions.
All right. Well, let us move on to some Q&A. Hopefully we've got a couple questions out there and we can be able to answer any questions that you may still have.
I do. I for sure have one. James, I'm going to toss it at you, I think. What is your thought about using research data to influence the organization's selling process for like admission counselors per se?
Absolutely. So that's a really, really interesting question, and I think about this a lot. So one of the critiques I have of a lot of institutional marketing is that oftentimes it really presents the institution, and the attributes and strengths and weaknesses, of the institution, and it follows a path that is frankly more like what I went through. When I was applying to college 100 years ago, I remember writing essays and doing everything to make myself appear like I was the best fit for that institution. And that model has completely flipped, right? This younger generation of students, higher education is a much more commoditized entity, frankly. And it's really, students are basically looking for, how does your institution fit me, right? And so, for example, in a lot of the questions that we're asking on these surveys and whatnot, we're trying to understand not only what makes the prospective student tick, but what are they looking for in terms of proof points from the institution. So, one of the surveys that we showed for example, asked people to kind of rank order what was most important to them, cost, academic quality, outcomes, internship opportunities, different things like that. So what I would say is, in all research, you want to be developing an understanding of the buyer, in this case, the prospective student, and then you want to tailor your institutional offerings, i.e. your selling process, to fit based upon the priorities and, the important attributes that those prospective students are looking for. So, I think that oftentimes higher education institutions, and frankly, a lot of other organizations, feel like, hey, here's sort of a playbook on how to sell effectively, right? But oftentimes those strategies don't really take into account the needs and wants of the buyer or the prospective students. And so that's what, research ultimately, it's all about listening, right? All we're trying to do through research is ask the right questions. And then it's on us to listen to and put into practice those answers in as segmented and personalized ways we can. So, these students, they get bombarded obviously with millions of emails from schools. They know what's a generic communication and what isn't. And so, it's just really about collecting the right data and then using it in a way that makes those prospective students say, hey, you know what? They kind of get me. They're listening to me.
Yeah, and actually, when you were talking, James, I think about what are we selling? What are when I think of all the programs at an institution, some programs are really the ones that were direct entry, doctoral level, easy sells. You always have the applicants for that, but we always sometimes had struggle with these smaller ones. I think we talked a little bit about it in our communication webinar last month. We had to go to the faculty now. And we were a smaller school, mentioned counselors split it up, and we actually went and did one-on-one interviews with each director of the program. And what you found out about what alumni were doing, what they were doing in classrooms that we had no clue on. Think about taking research from just asking students questions to then flipping it, ask the faculty questions. Half the time they are more than eager to brag about themselves. So it's about how you ask them too, of course. Stroke their ego, make them feel really good. They're going to tell you, like, what are your top alumni do? What are the top alumni that you taught through your program? What are the amazing things they're doing? Well, yeah, that's what I did. I made these alumni. What are the classes that your students talk about the most and that you always fill, or you have a trouble, have enough spots? Why is that? What's going on there? And then that gives you more of that research to sell to the students, and can be used again. Not only are you using it on the road and you're using an email, some of this should be on your website. Each program should have selling points on the websites, not just like biology, you're going to study these courses. What is a selling point? Why are you important to me, your school at this time? What are you going to make me do? Because it's about me as a student.
Yep. And hey, I just tried to share my screen out again. I don't know if it's working, but
it is.
Okay. So, one of the other things is that you mentioned speaking to faculty, speaking to students. One of the things that we at Media Cross are really emphasizing are, again, enabling you to talk to your relevant internal and external audience members. So to that end, we have created, templates based upon our years of doing studies like this that enable you to survey admitted students who didn't enroll, alumni, prospective students, current students, faculty and staff. Parents. So we basically, again, we are willing to help out and do, everything soup to nuts to the extent that that's desired. But we're also providing tools where, quite honestly, if you have people with some research experience and digital marketing experience at your schools, you can quickly take some of the tools that we offer and very quickly, customize and brand some very solid templates, basically, to communicate with various audiences, both internally and externally.
Perfect.
Awesome. Corey, any more questions there?
No, I think that is our base question that we have. And so if there's no other questions, this is the next slide. I just want to make sure I don't jump the gun.
Yeah, go for it.
So no more questions. We're really excited that you came. If anything, one thing that we always put out there is if there's any questions for us, we're all on LinkedIn. My name's Corey Baker, pretty easily spelled. There's probably a lot of us out there, though. You can find Josh a lot easier because his name is special. And then Dr. Vineburgh's on there too, but feel free to reach out. We've been communicating with you via email. It's probably how you signed up anyway, so you can always respond back to any of those emails and kind of just let us know if you need anything, if you just want to chat, you want to know of any things that we're doing, please feel free to reach out, even if it's just a talk shop.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, James, for joining us this afternoon. I know Corey and I, again, we could be here for hours and hours and hours just digging and digging and digging. And thank you for the folks that are here and that attended. We hope that this was really beneficial for you and that you got some good information, some good takeaways. You can see where you can start implementing these things from here on out. And again, we're here to support you in any way, shape, or form that you may need that support as well too. So we are going to take a slight break for August, but we want to hear from you, and we'll be sending out a follow-up survey to hear what are the important things that you need to know right now that potentially we could help and we could support you with, and that what we could cover to really be a benefit for you, because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. Now, granted, I love to see Corey's smiling face, but it really is to support you and to ensure that your needs are met and that we can help in any way, shape, or form.
Definitely. So again, James, thank you. Josh,
thank
if you
you.
can forward the slides, I think.
Thanks again.
We always, now that we're in our second one, we like to end with, you need to be excellent to each other. So thank you guys for being here. If there's anything you need, reach out.
Have a great afternoon, folks.